Done enough. Have you no sense of decency, sir? At long last, have you left no sense of decency?
Were you ever a communist spy, Mr. Hiss?
No, I was not. Neither a communist nor a spy, nor both together.
In the early days of the Cold War, tensions were rising between the two largest global powers following the end of the Second World War, the United States and the Soviet Union. Socialism exploded across the globe, leading many Americans to fear for their freedom and their way of life. This era of paranoia, caused by the communist influence, is called the Red Scare. The quiet little town of Lynbrook would play an unlikely role in one of the most controversial cases in American history. This is the story of Whittaker Chambers, an editor, a spy, a whistleblower, and a man who would become the center of the Red Scare. Born in Philadelphia on April 1st, 1901, Whittaker Chambers would move to Lynbrook at the age of 3. He would call this town home on and off for 40 years. His mother was an actor from a wealthy family, and his father was an artist in a town that was mainly blue-collar laborers and business owners. They stood out as different. His mother resented their lower status and believed that the town was not well organized enough for her. She began organizing a school parents organization called the Mothers Club that would later become the first PTA. She would also establish the Private Library Association that would become the Lynbrook Public Library. His father, a nonconformist, challenged social norms, famously making a bet that he could walk through the town in his pajamas without anyone noticing. The Chambers family was anything but conventional. His home life was tumultuous. His father had secret gay affairs. His grandmother suffered from dementia. A rumor spread around town that it was actually true that his grandmother wandered the halls at night with an axe or a knife banging on all the doors. And his brother's tragic suicide haunted him for life. We were not a family. Our home was not a home. My father was not a father. My mother was not a mother. That left me absolutely alone. Seeking purpose, Chambers was drawn to radical politics. Introduced to socialism by a neighbor, he would fully embrace communism during his studies at Columbia University. It was a growing sentiment in academia to embrace the ideas of socialism and communism as Europe was in a time of great transition, moving away from the traditional imperialist governments that fell during World War I, and started thinking about a new, more progressive form of government. This is where Chambers' involvement in the movement was initially established. At Columbia, Chambers became editor of the Columbia Morning Slider, but was expelled after writing a play that was deemed blasphemous. Undeterred, he became a writer for the New Masses, the leading American communist publication. He married fellow communist Esther Shemitz and fully committed himself to the party's cause. But Chambers wasn't just a writer. He was recruited as a Soviet spy, a courier delivering secrets from deep within the US government to the Kremlin. But his faith in communism was shattered. Reports of Stalin's purges, mass executions, and brutal labor camps made him question his alliance with the Soviets. Chambers realized He wasn't just a part of a political movement made for bringing about equality. He was part of an espionage network aiding a totalitarian regime. Fearing for his life, he and his family fled to a Maryland farm in 1938. Severing ties with the party, he had become a marked man. As World War II loomed, Chambers attempted to warn the U.S. government about Soviet infiltration when they allied themselves with the Nazis. He attempted to show the evidence to FDR, but was ultimately dismissed because FDR was afraid that the fear of socialism and communism would impact his New Deal policies he was trying to enact. He met with Assistant Secretary of State Adolf Berle in 1939, but the evidence was ignored because of the Soviets' alliance with the Allies nearing the end of World War II. Nearly a decade later, the political climate had changed. In 1948, the House of Un-American Activities Committee reopened its investigation into communist influence. Chambers was called to testify. Among those accused was Alger Hiss, a high-ranking government official and a close advisor to President Roosevelt. Once friends, now enemies, Chambers' testimony implicated Hiss as a Soviet spy. Hiss denied everything, calling Chambers a liar, a thief, and mentally unstable. The case divided the nation. With no hard evidence, it seemed Hiss would walk free until Chambers produced the so-called pumpkin papers, microfilms hidden in a hollowed-out pumpkin on his farm containing government secrets Hiss had allegedly passed to the Soviets. Hiss was convicted of perjury in 1950 and sentenced to 5 years in prison. Chambers, though victorious, paid a heavy price. He lost his job at Time magazine and faced relentless attacks on his character. The pressure nearly destroyed him, so much so that, while staying at his mother's home in Lynbrook, he attempted suicide by inhaling cyanide gas. He survived and never wavered from his testimony. Chambers spent the rest of his life in near obscurity. His memoir, Witness, initially gained attention but faded from public interest. In 1958, he inherited his mother's home in Lynbrook, where he would spend his final years before dying of a heart attack in 1961. Decades later, Chambers would be reconsidered as a hero. In 1988, President Ronald Reagan awarded him the Presidential Medal of Freedom, recognizing his courage in exposing Soviet espionage. Whittaker Chambers remains one of the most controversial figures of the 20th century. To some, he was a hero who helped unmask a communist threat. To others, he was a traitor who betrayed his former comrades. His story is a reminder of the deep ideological battles that once gripped America, a battle fought not just in Washington, but in small towns like Lynbrook, where the Cold War was more than just politics, it was personal.